Number 10. Resurrection. While not always influenced by Madelyne and her own abilities, Maddie not only has a powerful healing factor, but she seems to have found herself in a constant cycle of resurrection. Meaning that even when she seems to be dead and gone and we haven't seen her for honestly years, she's the kind of villain, and honestly not even just a villain now, also just as a character, that always comes back. Madelyne has been defeated multiple times and has returned since her initial introduction and defeat in Inferno more than 5 times over the course of her 40-year history. Now that is quite a lot of returns, and also quite a lot of disappearances, honestly. One thing is for sure, if Maddie is killed or seemingly permanently defeated or disposed of in some way, she always comes back. Eventually anyways. Might take a few years, but she'll be back. And friends, before I move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, be sure to show us you love us by clicking that subscribe button. Number 9. Phoenix Force. The Phoenix Force is literally a part of Madelyne Pryor. No, seriously, she wouldn't exist without it. While some might argue that Madelyne Pryor is a weaker version of Jean Grey, those folks likely don't understand her origin. At least her retcon origin. Not the origin Chris Claremont originally intended for her, but the one we got. Jean has been connected to the Phoenix Force before, being its host, but Maddie is literally made from a piece of the Phoenix, with a piece of it residing inside her. So she doesn't need to be a host of the Force to tap into its raw power and energy. The Phoenix Force is one of the most powerful forces in all of the known universe, and potentially even the multiverse over at Marvel, considering it has the ability to literally rewrite reality. Because Maddie was literally made from it, this also means its potential lives inside her as well. Maddie did not know her origin and initially lived appearing as a normal human. It wasn't until she learned the truth of her origin, her retconned origin admittedly, that she began to be able to tap into her true mutant and even cosmic power. Number 8. Psychic Link. Madelyne Pryor has the ability to link her mind to another being. We see her doing this during the initial Inferno event, and honestly, it's pretty scary. It is in doing this that she almost completely destroys and defeats Jean Grey during their fight against one another. I can't even imagine having my mind psychically linked to someone, especially not someone who looks identical to me and seemingly kind of stole my life. I mean, whichever way you want to look at that, either from Jean's perspective or Maddie's perspective, they could definitely both share that perspective when looking at the other of someone stealing someone's life. Initially, the two women shared a psychic link, one that Madelyne later exploits during Inferno in an attempt to kill Jean, although of course through harming herself. Madelyne's plan at that point is to basically take her own life, thereby destroying Jean through their link, thereby taking Jean down along with her. If I'm going down, you're coming with me, and I'll go down if it means I can defeat you. Number 7. Lives on in Jean. I think one of the most wild powers that Maddie has in the comics that we tend to overlook is her influence over Jean. Now, following the events of Inferno, Madelyne's personality and memories basically lived on in Jean Grey. Jean was forced to take both Maddie's psyche and the Phoenix Force within herself in order to survive Maddie's psychic attack on her soul. This actually gives Madelyne some power through Jean though. It's actually through Madelyne's influence that Jean and the X-Men decided to fatally attack Mr. Sinister, seemingly destroying him permanently after Inferno. Although of course in reality he would return, because that's comics for you. Normally such use of lethal force would not be the X-Men or Jean's way, but it was Maddie's influence that actually prompted them to act as such. While it's not a power that Maddie can easily control or flex necessarily, it's still pretty impressive to think that technically Sinister initially being permanently defeated was in good part because of Maddie's influence on and manipulation of the hero's psyches. Number 6. Take your memories. At one point, Madelyne Pryor attempts to take all of Jean's memories, and even threatens to do so. During the Dark Web event, she actually worked with Chasm, the current evil persona of Ben Reilly, who had worked on a device that would forcefully take someone's memories from them. Ben was doing this to basically get the memories that he lost back during the Beyond event, aiming to get them back from Peter Parker's Spider-Man, since Ben's early memories were initially copied from Peter's mind when Ben was created. Without them, there was a big hole in his mind and his personality, a chasm, if you will, get it? Teaming up with Ben, Maddie sought to retrieve memories of raising her baby, who would eventually grow up through time to become Cable, from Jean. She felt that she was basically robbed of these memories after she was defeated in the initial Inferno event, with Jean taking over her role as baby Cable's mom. However, in the end, Maddie didn't have to forcibly take Jean's memories at all, as instead Jean chose to willingly share them with Madelyne, having never wanted to fight her in the first place. However, it was still a power that Madelyne has and she could have used it, but she didn't. Number 5. Control over demons. Madelyne Pryor isn't just known as Madelyne Pryor. In the comics, she also has another name, the Goblin Queen. In fact, when I was recently cosplaying Maddie at SDCC this year, most people referred to me by that name. They call me the Goblin Queen. Most people knew me either as Jean's evil clone or just the Goblin Queen. Maddie earned this name after she made a pact with the demon of Limbo, thereby becoming their queen. Although she may have felt pretty in her power at that time, in reality she was still kinda just being manipulated by them somewhat. Still, Maddie did hold some sway over the goblins and demons of Limbo, considering that she was their ally and their partner. And you know, Goblin Queen. But like I said, how much power did she have at that time? I don't think she had a ton, really. Number 4. Her secret name. The really wild thing with Madelyne Pryor that still amazes me is her secret name. I'm not talking about her title as the Black Queen or even the Goblin Queen. I'm talking more about the fact that no one really seems to know just how to spell her name. I constantly run into this on the internet, and while it might not seem like a power to some, in the DC universe and other different magically based worlds, it would likely be considered an asset. It would be considered a power because it would protect you. Madelyne's name is spelled Madelyne with Pryor as Pryor. The fact that so many struggle to spell it or even know it would be seen as an asset in many other magical worlds where there is considered to be power in knowing and having someone's name. Like over at DC Comics, this is why some magic users have actually used alternative names. That way they can keep their real ones a secret, so that way demons can't like get their names and like control them or manipulate them. Constantine initially even tried to do this with Hellblazer, but he became too well known and famous and decided to give up his codename as a kind of take that statement to the magic community as a whole. So that's where that name comes from. Number 3. Leave you speechless. As I said earlier, Madelyne Pryor isn't just a powerful psychic, she was also crafted from a piece of the Phoenix Force by Mr. Sinister, putting her on the same level, if not above, potentially, someone like Jean Grey. Still, even then, I was pretty shocked when she reappeared in Hellions and used her powers to make Havoc's mouth literally disappear. This could be perceived as an illusion, an illusory power, but the way it was gruesomely portrayed makes me think it was more of like Maddie manipulating and rewriting reality to literally erase Havoc's mouth from his face, which she either did through, you know, maybe Phoenix connections or just through magic. A la Scarlet Witch with Black Bolt in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Pretty spooky stuff. Number 2. Rules over Limbo. Recently, in the New Mutants comic, Madelyne Pryor once more became the Goblin Queen. But this time, more literally the Goblin Queen. She actually took over ruling Limbo from magic, and what's even more wild is she didn't seek to conquer Limbo. She didn't take it by force. Instead, magic decided to give over rulership to Madelyne. Magic had her own reasons, largely to get some distance from something that was literally attached to and represented her childhood trauma, while Madelyne obviously had much to gain from the change in power, chiefly a whole kingdom. However, unlike last time when Madelyne wanted to use the power of Limbo for ill, she was revealed to have actually genuinely turned over a new leaf, it seemed, wanting to keep the demons of Limbo in check. At least, that's how it seemed initially. Her designs ended up being somewhat reimagined, shall we say, for the Dark Web event, as she was more depicted as a villain there who used Limbo's resources and populace to once more invade New York City. But we'll get to that in a second. I mean, that all got resolved now. It's kind of a weird thing though, where they were like, she's good. Just kidding, she's evil again. Just kidding, she's good again. You're like, what's happening here? What are we doing with this character? Number 1. Master Diplomat? Madelyne Pryor is perhaps working towards becoming a master diplomat and leader. At the end of the Dark Web event, with Maddie once more being reformed and even becoming an ally of the X-Men during the event, fighting alongside them and even getting to call on them to assemble, so nice, she decides to open up her own embassy for Limbo, stationing it in New York City. Maddie does this to bring the darkness into the light, believing the spirits of Limbo have been hidden away for far too long, seeing them as representing her own darkness and basically saying like, we try to like hide our darkness and suppress it and like put it away, but you know what, in order to heal we need to bring it out into the light. She intends to make sure that the beings of Limbo are no longer rejected and in fact are seen and accepted by the world above and in this case now around them. which I kind of love, honestly. I think that's beautiful.
At number 10, he's a god. I think this is something that a decent amount of people forget. Thor is literally the god of thunder. Like, yeah, he's a demigod technically, but he's still a freaking god. And this comes with a whole bunch of associated powers, like Superman toughness, senses, strength, and the fact that he's 1,500 years old. Yeah, that's also a thing. He's normally depicted as being 1,500 and 1,800 years old, which makes me really question the ethics and morals behind Thor and Jane's love triangle thing. Like, at what age does an Asgardian become legal? Or is that just like whenever their body decides to grow? Because again, they're gods. As deities, this aspect is inherent to their existence, granting Thor self-sufficiency and rendering him immune to the same necessities for aging as humans. So while Odin serves as an example of aging among gods, Thor is always looking good, so I doubt he'll get old anytime soon. If you're enjoying this video so far, please support us by giving this video a like, subscribing to Top 10 Nerd, and ringing that notification bell. At number 9 is Super Breath. Introduced and seemingly only used in Journey into Mystery number 86 from back in 1962, Thor has the ability to blow really hard. Okay, wait, let me rephrase that. He will blow you to kingdom come. No, that's even worse. There's no good way to say it. Well, what I mean is that Thor's god lungs are so powerful, he can actually cause a hurricane with an exhale. In the comic in question, a villain known as Zarko tries to shoot Thor with a pew-pew that would send him to another dimension, but to stop this from happening, Thor uses his super breath, which is described as a hurricane force, to get out of it. No idea how breath can save you from entering the 4th dimension, but hey, all bets are off with this one because it was only used once, and of course, in the comics. There will never be an explanation that makes sense. At number 8 is super speed. Thor, a deity wielding the mighty Mjolnir, possesses astonishing speeds in his arsenal. He isn't just renowned for his immense strength within the Marvel universe, but also his extraordinary swiftness, surpassing even the speed of light. This remarkable velocity enables Thor to outpace Quicksilver, a prominent speedster among the X-Men, essentially Marvel's answer to the Flash. While an exact measurement of Thor's velocity remains elusive, he has indicated that on Earth his speed is supersonic, yet when traveling in space he can circumnavigate the sun and span the universe in mere seconds, feat made possible by Mjolnir's ability to transcend time and space. Indeed, Thor's exploits include even freaking time travel. At number 7 is All-Tongue. Well, this might sound like something you'd see on a Toronto guy's Tinder profile. It isn't exactly what you'd think. An Asgardian deity responsible for safeguarding the 9 realms, Thor's duty often requires interactions with vastly diverse races, many of which communicate in distinct languages. And although filmmakers tend to simplify matters by having everybody speak English for audience interpretation, the comic version of Thor possesses the remarkable ability to converse fluently in the language of all 9 realms. He can actually choose which language to use during a conversation. This remarkable skill is known as the All-Tongue, a gift that ensures whoever communicates with him will hear his words in their native tongue, allowing for seamless understanding. So basically, Thor can talk in whatever language he wants, and everyone he's talking to is able to understand him. Like a live-in-the-moment translator that actually gets the grammar right instead of just being a literal word-for-word translation. At number 6 is Warrior's Madness. Comic books and movies have depicted numerous instances where heroes find themselves facing superior and overwhelming forces in battles. Tactics they employ to survive against insurmountable odds and achieve victory can be attributed to a range of factors, and among these heroes, Thor stands out as someone who's endowed with such an ability which, if harnessed, has the potential to significantly impact not only his adversaries but also all those close to him. When he's in a pinch, Thor can call upon the Warrior's Madness. The Warrior's Madness, also referred to as Sin Unpardonable, stands as Asgard's most forbidden affliction under Odin's decree. Those afflicted bear the weight of a dire penalty, with only the most solemn sacrifices capable of redemption. This malady grants Thor a tenfold surge in strength and endurance, yet perilously endangers his mental well-being. It manifests through symptoms such as berserker fury, intense migraines, erratic thoughts, savage and animalistic actions, uncontrollable behavior, and irrationality. At number 5 is Earthbending. During the early 2000s, a series of intricate events led to numerous Asgardians becoming trapped within the bodies of ordinary humans. This continued until Thor emerged from his prolonged slumber, breaking the cycle of Ragnarok and establishing a new Asgard above Oklahoma. Thor's return marked a rebirth, unveiling his extraordinary power over Earth itself, elevating him to one of the mightiest Asgardian deities. Embracing his elder god lineage, Thor's abilities expanded beyond mere weather manipulation. He gained dominion over vast chasms spanning continents and trigger earthquakes. In moments requiring more than weaponry and brawn, the creation of chasms to separate Thor from his adversaries proved to be an essential strategy. At number 4 is teleportation. In 2000, 2000, Marvel introduced the Ultimate Marvel Universe as a way to refresh long-standing characters with new variations and minor reboots. On Earth 1610, many of Marvel's iconic figures underwent an updated and reimagined depictions, including Thor, who exhibits a distinct divergence. In this rendition, Thor's reliance on Mjolnir for his abilities is diminished, showcasing a more arrogant and resilient warrior. Unlike his traditional counterpart, Thor from 1610's powers are not solely derived from Mjolnir. Rather, they're channeled through the enchanted hammer, resulting in a significant reduction of his power level within the Ultimate Universe. However, this drawback is balanced by his new form ability to teleport through rune magic. Reports suggest that he can traverse vast distances, spanning cosmic expanses and bridging dimensions. Despite these unique traits, the full scope of Thor's capabilities in this universe remains a mystery. At number 3 is Anti-Force. Beyond its association with potent lightning bolts, Mjolnir possesses a versatile range of abilities. Among these, it can harness and manipulate diverse energies, unleashing multitude of formidable blasts. The Anti-Force stands as one of the most formidable, albeit used sparingly, in a weapon of last resort against adversaries who defy conventional defeat. The Anti-Force's immense destructive energies are inherently pervious, capable of obliterating entire planets. Thor can now create, shape, and manipulate anti or negative forces, which work in different ways depending on the force. Anti-gravity, for example, would repel objects instead of retract. Anti-electromagnetism would cause like charges to attract and opposite charges to repel. Anti-friction and anti-velocity would speed up objects or flow instead of resisting them. Anti-strong force would cause nuclei to explode, and the anti-weak force would cause radioactive growth instead of radioactive decay. Pretty weird. At number 2 is the Odin Force. On various occasions, Thor has been granted the Mighty of Odin Force, an infusion of the cosmic and mystical energies from the realm of Asgard by his father. This divine inheritance amplifies all of his abilities, amalgamating Odin's, Vili's, V's, and his own powers, thus significantly elevating Thor's prowess. Demonstrating this augmented might, Thor managed to fracture Captain America's shield with a single blow, relocated Asgard above New York City's skies, and contained a nuclear missile's explosion. The extent of Thor's achievements while wielding this power was considered just a fraction of its potential, as per the Avatar of Odin Force. As Mjolnir suffered the damage during a confrontation with Bor, Thor sought the assistance of Stephen Strange for its repair, and to mend the hammer, Strange revealed that Thor would need to invest his remaining Odin Force and permanently bind the essence with the hammer. Despite the risk, Thor willingly underwent ancient ritual performed by Dr. Strange, channeling the Odin Force back into Mjolnir and restoring its integrity. Becoming the Allfather of Asgard after the War of the Realms, Thor once again bequeathed the mighty Odin Force, with Odin's ultimate sacrifice granting him access to its full potential. At number 1 is the Celestial Chef. Jarnbjorn, a dwarven forged battle axe crafted from Asgardian steel for Runa, an original Valkyrior member, became significant as she vanished, absorbed by the headless Celestial. Stored in Asgard's arsenal, the weapon was later wielded by Thor before he possessed Mjolnir. In the 9th century, struggling to lift Mjolnir, Thor utilized Jarnbjorn as his primary tool against various earthbound adversaries such as frost giants, trolls, and dragons. During the 11th century, Thor empowered the axe with his blood to permeate celestial armor, confronting Apocalypse. However, Thor eventually lost Jarnbjorn, which was later claimed by Kang the Conqueror from Baron Mordo's tomb. The Apocalypse twins, Uriel and Aemon, took the axe from Kang and employed it to slay a celestial gardener, becoming the new Apocalypse and orchestrating a plot to incriminate Earth for its demise. The twins manipulated Scarlet Witch to save mutants while humanity faced destruction, leading to the transportation of all mutants to their Ark, leaving Earth and its inhabitants behind.
Number 10, faster than lightning. I knew Hyperion was fast, but I did not know he was that fast. Honestly, kind of the same with his strength. It's interesting to learn he's an Eternal, because Eternals I always think of being somewhat limited in terms of their physical abilities, even though they are extremely powerful. Hyperion as an alien Eternal, though, might be even more powerful all around. In addition to the super strength you've likely marveled at before on the page, Hyperion is also extremely fast and has been shown to move faster even than light itself, if we are talking the Earth 13034 version of the character, which is also considered one of the main versions. We'll get into that in a minute. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, be sure to let us know that you love us and that you love Hyperion by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 9, Eternal Physiology. Seriously, I just learned this one, even though it seems oddly intrinsic to this character. I don't know how I missed it. I thought Hyperion was just a powerful alien from another world like DC Superman, being one of the Marvel equivalent characters, and he is, but he's also, in a very Marvel way, an Eternal, a powerful Eternal alien. So I had to share that with you in case, like me, you also did not know this and you just thought he was an alien from another world. The important thing to know with Hyperion is there are many different versions of him, since he himself is not even even inherently an Earth 616 main continuity character. And when it comes to which Hyperion is considered the mainstay, that has actually kind of changed over time. For this point though, we're talking about Hyperion of Earth 712, who first appeared in Avengers 85 back in 1971. The first Hyperion to appear, I believe, in the comics. And when it comes to this version of the character, he is actually considered to be an Eternal. In fact, I think all versions of him are still considered to be Eternal, but still somehow I missed that origin. This is how Hyperion is able to channel energy, which ultimately charges his powers. To be clear, this version of Eternal physiology does not translate to robots like we learned in the MCU, which is also based off of a revelation of what the Eternals are in the comics as well, at least the Earth-based Eternals. However, at this time they were just prehistoric humans initially who were experimented on by the Celestials when they visited Earth more than a millennia ago, and the Celestials also went out to other planets, did this in other places, so there are other Eternals. Hence why Thanos is also kind of connected to the Eternals, he's also one. But from Titan. Number 8. Invulnerable in every sense. Okay, so I knew Hyperion was invulnerable, but what I didn't fully comprehend is just what high level of invulnerability he possesses. If we're talking about Earth 712 Hyperion, the first version of the character to appear, we have seen him completely unharmed by impossibly strong weapons and metals such as Ultimate Wolverine of Earth 1610's adamantium claws. Wolverine's claws are typically known for being able to cut through most things, but apparently Hyperion is not one of those things, or beings rather, that he can harm with his famous weapons. Aside from that, this version of Hyperion has also withstood direct blows from Thor's famous Uru hammer, Mjolnir. Withstanding the blow of Thor's hammer is no easy feat, and even some of the most resilient heroes and villains from Marvel crumble under the weight of its blows. So pretty impressive. Number 7. Doesn't need to breathe. We don't know this one for sure when it comes to certain versions of this character, but what we do know about Earth 712 Marcus Milton, aka Hyperion, is that he can travel in space without any assistance. He doesn't need a special suit, and it doesn't seem to be through the specific use of a power that he can protect himself from the cold vacuum of space. Some believe he can survive flying around in space where there is no oxygen because, well, he doesn't actually need to breathe. On top of this, we know that Hyperion can continue to fight for days on end without tiring, only growing tired after multiple days of relentless and unyielding battle, where he has to operate at his peak levels of power. While not confirmed for Earth 712's Hyperion, the version of Earth 13034 has confirmed that he doesn't depend on oxygen to survive, which likely means that his 712 counterpart doesn't need to breathe either. Number 6. Powered by the sun. Something else that I find fascinating about Hyperion, and that I didn't personally know, is that he is literally solar powered. He can actually absorb solar energy and use this to give himself energy, which is how he can fight for so long in battle. He basically takes in the solar energy and converts it to usable energy in his body. If his solar energy stores are full, once he depletes energy accrued through other more typical means for us humans, he can use the solar photons to keep himself going, converting those into energy which he then uses to power himself. I guess this shouldn't surprise me, considering he is, like I said earlier, basically one of Marvel's versions of DC's Superman, but I didn't know that he was that close to an adaptation, even sharing Clark's sort of solar-based abilities in some regards. It's a little different, but still similar. Number 5. What tires us only makes him stronger. Not only does Hyperion not need to breathe, which makes him a pretty scary foe to face, to be honest, if you had to, but he doesn't tire at all in the same way that we do. When humans exert themselves, and more specifically their muscles, they actually expel energy. The stress on your body and your muscles causes you to tire physically, and in some cases mentally, and causes you to get sore afterward in response to this stress. For Hyperion though, the stress and chemicals that we release that communicate to us to slow down actually only power him up. So as he gets exhausted, he actually becomes more energized. The fatigue turns into energy in his body because of his unique physiology, meaning that while some other Marvel characters might tire through when they're fighting Hyperion in a battle, Hyperion would be more than ready for the next round, despite clearly having just exerted himself. Number 4. Immune to extreme temperatures. While if you put most of us below freezing or above boiling temperatures, we'd simply get super messed up and eventually die, for Hyperion, this is not a risk. The version of the character that hails from Earth 13034 is actually so durable that he can resist the effects of extreme temperatures, meaning that freezing him or setting him ablaze will basically have no effect on the hero, at least when it comes to the temperature. He can apparently survive temperatures lower than -200 degrees Celsius and higher than 6 6,000 degrees Celsius. I can't even imagine spending a full day outside when it's higher than like 45 degrees Celsius, so I can't imagine how he doesn't just simply turn into a literal human puddle of goo in plus 6,000, but apparently he would still be solid, even in that super extreme heat. Number 3. Cosmic energy powered healing factor. I would expect someone like Hyperion to have a healing factor, but what I wouldn't have guessed is exactly how said healing factor works. For Hyperion, he is actually able to manipulate cosmic energy, and it is through this manipulation that he heals himself. His healing factor is so intense that it protects him at all times from disease, infections, and even erases the effects of aging, keeping him eternally young. However, it is also reliant on his cosmic energy stores, which is also what he uses when activating his atomic vision. So while you might have known that Hyperion has a healing factor, you may not have understood that overusing his atomic vision, which depletes his cosmic energy stores, results in Hyperion being unable to heal himself. However, as long as he can survive whatever injury was done to him, he can always replenish his stores to heal later, so it's a temporary thing. Using his atomic vision actually also does damage to his eyes, meaning that he actually has to use the cosmic energy to do both if he wants to be able to see after using his atomic vision powers. Number 2. Microscopic radiation vision. Hyperion can also see things that most humans cannot, such as microscopic traces of radiation on the human body. At one point, he is asked about a dead body and is able to identify that it is not from the same world as the one he occupies. He can tell this just from looking at the body that the solar radiation it has absorbed is basically not the same, thereby discerning that the being is from another world entirely. He shares this information with S.H.I.E.L.D. director at the time, Maria Hill, but believes that is something that she already knew about and wonders what else she knows that she might be keeping from him. So Hyperion isn't just a heavy hitter, he's also quite intelligent and has enhanced senses that only add to his knowledge and perspective of the world around him and those that inhabit it. Not someone you want to mess with, guys. Not someone you want to mess with. Number 1. Held off an incursion. If you are not familiar with the incursions, they are basically when various worlds started to come together, colliding. As a result, many Earths, their heroes, and their villains died, with those universes obliterating one another in the collision. When the incursions came for Hyperion's world, he decided to put himself in between the collision to stop it, and for a moment he actually succeeded, holding the two universes apart using just his own strength. However, he couldn't hold this forever, and eventually the worlds would collide, but even then Hyperion would remain. This was a feat accomplished by the Hyperion of Earth 13034. I still can't believe that he survived that. That's crazy.
Number 10. Thermokinesis. Considering his name is Iceman, everyone knows that Bobby Drake has cryokinesis, aka the ability to generate, manipulate, and fully control ice and snow. But this goes hand in hand with his thermokinesis as well. This is the ability to lower both his external and internal body temperature, which projects intense coldness from his body. Like the rest of us humies, the nerve centers for regulating Iceman's body temperature are found in the part of the brain called the hypothalamus. Unlike us though, Iceman can mentally override his hypothalamus to allow his body temperature to be lowered. This ability converts the latent thermal energies in and around his body into an unknown form of energy that is then dissipated. Now this would potentially hurt a human, but a related mutation has also rendered his body tissues unaffected by sub-zero temperatures, thankfully and luckily. Iceman can consciously immediately lower his body temperature from its normal 98 degrees Fahrenheit to absolute zero and lower within the span of a few tenths of a second. Number 9. Icy cover. As Iceman's body temperature drastically falls, the surrounding moisture in the air that is in contact with him also begins to lower in temperature. In a similar but much more extreme way that condensed moisture forms frost, the moisture surrounding Iceman forms an icy covering which encompasses his entire body and obscures his face. When Iceman first began doing this and appeared in the early X-Men comics, this ability essentially made our mutant look like a snowman. He was covered head to toe in snow. But as Bobby learned to increase the severity of his coldness, the consistency of this frozen moisture became crystalline ice. This ice constantly cracks with any movement of his body and immediately reforms, allowing Bobby to move, but with a cracking ice sound every time. Through practice, Iceman has learned to control the intensity of his coldness, and he can selectively lower the temperature of isolated parts of his body to cause this icy shielding in specific areas. Number 8. Organic ice form. But Bobby doesn't only cover himself in ice, he can also completely become ice. Hilariously and kind of redundantly, it's called organic ice. I don't even know if that makes sense. Though the appearance can be similar to when he covers himself in ice, in this form Iceman is now virtually indestructible, or rather, he is basically unkillable, able to reform himself from being shattered or evaporated, and he is completely translucent in his ice form as well. He has even been incinerated while in human form and was able to rebuild himself in ice. In his ice form, he is able to use the moisture in the air to form spikes, shields, and attach other extra appendages to his body, which he can use in combat. Number 7. Ice Golems. Unsurprisingly, Iceman has the ability to create structures out of ice. The level of detail is determined by his own imagination, as his mastery over his powers has reached the atomic level. For most of his superhero career, Iceman was not able to make the ice sculptures move of their own accord, but this all changed during the Battle of the Atom event in 2013, when Iceman showed off a new extension of his abilities. It was revealed that Iceman can create basic ice structures that possess a rudimentary intelligence. One of these sculptures actually rebelled against Iceman and joined the Brotherhood, which is just frickin' weird. It also makes no sense, but this is a comic, so we just go with it. These constructs have been seeming ice clones of Iceman himself, or they have also been big, hulking behemoths and ice monsters. Some other constructs Bobby has created have been turning raindrops into fists that he used against the Iron Fist, a crystal-like ice focuser able to focus the laser beams of Cyclops, and even an entire ice city with intricate details. Number 6. Ice Zord. Bouncing off those semi-sentient constructs to something a bit more awesome that I think deserves its own whole point. In Wolverine and the X-Men issue 33 to 34, Iceman is part of a group of mutant faculty at Wolverine's Jean Grey School for Higher Learning sent to take on the Hellfire Academy and Cade Kilgore. Cade has been utilizing a handful of sentient living volcano behemoths to defend his academy, and while the heroes have a sentient living island fighting on their side, they only have one. So, what does Iceman do? Iceman creates an absolutely massive ice behemoth that looks like Voltron or like a Power Ranger Zord, with an absolutely massive ice sword, and he takes it into battle, slicing the behemoths apart and yelling "Glacier Fist" as he commands the ice Voltron from inside an ice cockpit. It's absolutely amazing and completely bonkers. Number 5. Hydrokinesis. Alright, so we know Iceman can control ice, but there was a time when Emma Frost mentally controlled Bobby, and she utilized his powers in ways that he had never even imagined. It turns out that since Iceman can control ice, which is just frozen water, then it actually makes total sense that he also has hydrokinesis, or the ability to manipulate water. And since he is a potential Omega level mutant, he can do it at a molecular level. We know that he can use surrounding moisture to augment himself, but when Emma was controlling him, she used his power to travel within large bodies of water very quickly by breaking down to his base levels in the water and then reforming at his destination. Iceman has demonstrated the ability to be transformed into nothing more than water or water vapor, yet remain conscious and retain the use of his powers. Essentially, wherever there is any moisture of any kind, Iceman is a threat. Number 4. Cryokinetic perception / cryo travel. Okay, so I'm going to wrap these two up into one, even though they aren't really technically fully the same, although they kind of are at the same time. For starters, after Bobby, whose powers were significantly amplified and who was kind of a little bonkers at the time, managed to freeze the earth in ice and snow, he gained the ability to spread his actual consciousness through the ice and through the snow to allow him to perceive literally all events occurring within it. He could monitor the entire earth through the ice and snow, and it made him practically a god. With his ability to transform organic matter, such as the human body, to organic ice and back again, it is possible for him to project his consciousness through moisture molecules and reform his body at the destination, like he did when Emma Frost controlled him, and he did indeed do this in this story as well, traveling through the ice and snow and appearing wherever he wanted. Number 3. Cellular replacement. We already talked about, a few times, Iceman's hydrokinesis and how he has literally turned himself into and traveled through the molecules of water. Well, Bobby also eventually discovered that he was able to use his control over moisture to draw ambient moisture into himself and thus use that moisture to replace his own body's cells. Quote, a body swap done one piece, one cell at a time. This upgrade to his already insane abilities allowed Bobby to avoid receiving a fatal dose of neurotoxin by letting the poisoned molecules of his body dissipate into vapor and then be replaced by untainted water molecules from his surroundings. Iceman can replace his own cells with new ones, healing and purging himself by remaking his own body. As long as there's moisture, Iceman cannot be stopped. It's just a fact. Number 2. Thermovision. With such a fine-tuned control over cold and temperature like what Iceman has, it would make sense that he would be able to maybe sense or feel heat. But it turns out he can literally see it. Because of the absence of heat around himself when his temperature is dropped, Bobby can literally see beings simply based on the heat signatures they give off. This happened most famously when the X-Men were facing against Onslaught. At the time, Onslaught managed to mess the X-Men's perception of things and became invisible. Luckily, the X-Men had Bobby. He scanned the entire room, and thanks to the heat that Onslaught's body was naturally giving off, Bobby saw Onslaught the minute he entered the room, using his ice blasts to attack him and break his psionic shielding, allowing the other X-Men to see him too. And finally, in at number 1, he can stop the Juggernaut. The Juggernaut is not just strong. The Juggernaut is fueled by magic, powered by a massively powerful extra-dimensional being called Sidorak. Through Sidorak, Juggernaut was granted the ability to gain unstoppable momentum with each step, to the point that not even the hammer of Thor can stop him in his tracks. Who cares about ancient magical Uru metal hammers though, when you have the power of ice? Iceman managed to completely stop the Juggernaut in his tracks during one of the X-Men's many encounters with Cain Marko. Now it is worth noting that Juggernaut was not in his top form at the time, but regardless, stopping the Juggernaut dead in his tracks using massive amounts of ice to immobilize him is incredibly impressive. But it wasn't the only way Bobby has stopped the guy, and this one, I have to warn you, is ridiculous even for a comic book. During another battle with the Juggernaut, Iceman got creative with his powers. Iceman used his powers to, and I quote, freeze the speed of light around him. Freeze the speed of light around Juggernaut. Iceman is so powerful he temporarily rewrote the laws of physics themselves to achieve his victory. It's also worth noting that in this same fight, he created wings made out of ice that actually allowed him to fly, which I don't think is possible. Personally though, if it was me, and I'm just gonna put in my own little opinion here, I would just make like a loop of ice so the Juggernaut slips and goes around and around and around and around, gaining speed and momentum, and then I would give it like a little offshoot ramp and just send him careening into space, like unable to stop. He would just be gone. What are you gonna do? Nothing. You can't stop. I'm just saying.
Number 10. Control over life and death. Obviously, as the Phoenix or even the Dark Phoenix, Jean has been shown to have this ability. But did you know that this power actually first manifested when Jean's powers did, really going on to showcase the potential of her future abilities. When Jean's best friend Annie died when she was little after being tragically hit by a car, the traumatic experience caused Jean's powers to manifest. She reached out and created a psychic link between her and her friend, and despite being very new to these abilities, Jean was actually able to hold her friend's mind there, keeping her alive and trying to protect her from the encroaching darkness. Unfortunately, she was not strong or skilled enough just yet to do so for more than a few moments, and ultimately could not bring her friend back to life as Annie's injuries were simply too great. Eventually, Annie's mind disappeared, dying while their minds were linked, leaving Jean alone in the darkness. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, and if you love when I get to talk about Jean Grey, I know I do, be sure to let us know by clicking that subscribe button if you're not subscribed already. And if you are, thank you. Number 9. A God's Mind. Sure, the progenitor at this point is not your standard celestial. It was actually created by the Eternals and the Avengers, chiefly with major help from the mutant Mr. Sinister and the main Avenger Tony Stark. The progenitor was revived and reprogrammed, given new morals that were dictated by Earth's heroes in the hopes that it would help the Eternals in ending the war between Druig who was then ruler of the Eternals, Eternal Prime if you will, and the mutants, who he had classified as deviants. However, this plan backfired when the Celestial decided to blame the inhabitants of Earth for the state of the planet, and put the entire populace basically on trial. In an attempt to save the world, Jean and a covert team infiltrated the progenitor, moving around inside it in the hopes of reaching its kill switch, so they could basically turn it off. Without Jean though, they never would have even made it very far. At the end, Jean was also crucial to the team's efforts, holding psychic damage that would have easily crushed them at bay, and breaking into the Celestial's mind. No small feat considering Celestials are giant cosmic gods. And yes, I know this one was one that was still made by the people of Earth sort of, but still, the wiring's all still there, you know what I mean? Number 8. Telepathy. While this one might seem obvious to most readers in the present day, it's important to note that Jean's powerful telepathic skills were actually for many years a secret to both readers and actually to Jean herself. Initially, when we're introduced to Jean in X-Men issue number 1, it is her telekinetic abilities that are put on display. She picks up a book and flips through it. And I gotta admit, initially Jean's powers actually seem like the best of the bunch, with the most potential in terms of power levels. And yes, I know this is not how Jean's powers would be depicted, but I'm just saying in that first issue when I was introduced to Jean, I thought she was super cool. However, this feeling of her being super powerful that I had would be very short-lived, as Jean would be shown to struggle with even lifting her own weight telekinetically. In fact, at one point, I think it's even mentioned that Jean's own physical weight is her max limit for what she can lift with her mind. Apparently, what one can lift with one's own body is weirdly relevant, or used to be anyways, when it came to what a superhero could lift with their mind. Jean's like, I can't lift that much. They were like, you can't lift that much with your mind either, girl. Evidently, we didn't want to let Jean be too powerful. Otherwise, who would act as the team's damsel in distress? Which was the role Jean quickly became relegated to filling, honestly. However, later on, not only would her telekinetic powers become stronger as a result of both training and her bond to the Phoenix Force, but we'd also learn that this wasn't even Jean's major ability. No. As a psionic, Jean actually became known for being more powerful as a telepath, an ability that was hidden away from her for most of her life in an attempt to protect her from her own inexperience and her power's instability, thanks to mental blocks that were put in place by, you guessed it, Charles Xavier, who first met Jean when she was very young and her powers had just begun to manifest. Charles, of course, would eventually remove these blocks later in Jean's life when he felt that Jean was better equipped to handle these extraordinarily powerful abilities. And maybe when he was like, you know what, I should probably, the cat's out of the bag, I gotta let people know Jean's actually super OP. I think he didn't want Jean to harsh his mellow, to be honest. Number 7. Empathy. One of the most overlooked powers that I think Jean and some others possess is the power of empathy. Empathy basically means that you feel what others feel. When someone says to you, I empathize, it's different than saying I sympathize, because they aren't just, imagining what you're going through and trying to understand it. They actually feel what you feel, likely having shared an experience with you or an emotional response at the very least. In comic book terms, being empathic, it doesn't usually just mean feeling what others feel. It can also mean controlling others' emotions, or using the emotions of people around you to make other people feel differently. A power that Jean has demonstrated before, like when she used her empathic skills to defeat Xavier's evil twin, Cassandra Nova. And she's actually used this ability to defeat a lot of people, I'm gonna be honest. But I don't think people think about the empathy, and it's pretty crazy, man. Number 6. Finding the weakness. I mean, as a telepath, of course Jean can scan your mind and take with her any information that she finds. And this, of course, includes, you guessed it, any weaknesses that you have. Especially if you fall into the trap of thinking about said weaknesses while Jean is in your mind. If you have a nut allergy, watch out if Jean Grey's around you if you're fighting her. But even if you don't think about your weaknesses, Jean could probably easily find this out. That is exactly what she managed to do, although it wasn't quite as easy to know when she got inside his head. And you'd think telepathically he'd be pretty gifted himself, being the creator and leader of a hive mind as the Clintar and symbiote King in Black. But even Null could not resist Jean's power, although she did have to try really hard, admittedly. Number 5. Overcoming mental blocks. This is most likely a case of writers just forgetting the focus of Jean's psionic powers in the earlier days, but it happened in continuity, so that also means we can kind of count their possible mistake as actually a major strength for Jean. And if another writer wanted to reflect back on this moment, they could easily use it to bolster Jean's power levels, even back in the day when she was notably written to be a lot weaker. Remember how I said that Professor X created mental blocks for Jean when it came to her telepathy, which he later removed when he felt she was ready to handle her own off-the-charts power levels? Well, apparently early on, Jean did still display some telepathic abilities, even somehow with those blocks supposedly in place. She read Professor X's mind in an issue of Captain America, sensing that something was wrong by reading his thoughts. She literally says like she read his mind basically. If this is true and it's considered canon, it would mean that Jean temporarily pushed through Xavier's mental blocks to read his mind, which, gotta be honest, that's like on a whole other level of power, I think. So if we want to count it as canon, there you go. Number 4, interstellar travel. When it comes to those with psionic abilities, we don't typically think of them as cosmic heroes who can fly through space and fight aliens, but guess what? Jean can. While bonded with the Phoenix Force, Jean has been shown to be capable of interstellar travel, propelling herself through space. The vacuum of space, she can just fly right through it and she feels fine, doesn't even need a spacesuit. She has also been shown to be able to fly and make it appear as though others are flying on Earth by using her telekinesis, but that one you probably already knew about. The interstellar travel though, that might have caught you unawares. Number 3, communicating undetected. Another great power as a telepath that Jean manages to have is keeping her telepathic conversations secret, which, when there's a lot of other telepaths around you, is not easy. Basically, there are many other powerful telepaths around you who could be trying to pry and eavesdrop on you, and a lot of them are also powerful. But Jean has managed to keep more than a few mental conversations a secret, even from some of the other most powerful telepaths in the universe, including Null, the god of symbiotes. While Null himself was in the middle of a telepathic conversation with Dylan, Jean actually managed to use her powers to slip into said conversation completely unnoticed, with Null not even aware that Jean was also talking to Dylan telepathically at the same time, and that Dylan wasn't really listening to him so much as he was listening to Jean. Honestly kinda rude, but also, yeah, Jean's trying to tell Dylan how to save the day, so fair enough. Number 2, control over nightmares. I don't know what's more frightening, the fact that Jean can basically manipulate people's dreams and nightmares through the villain Nightmare, or the threat she gave Nightmare after defeating him, where she basically said if she had to deal with him again, she was gonna destroy him at an atomic level. She's like, look, I don't like to end people's lives, but if you mess with me again, I will destroy you at an atomic level. Either way you slice it though, when it comes to nightmares that have been created by the god of nightmares himself, Nightmare, Jean is the one who would really call the shots between them when they're pitted against one another. I've seen them run into each other a few times, and it does not end well for Nightmare. Number 1, the Phoenix Force. This is less of a power and more of a really interesting fact about a power. So for those of you that heard me say that title and go, well obviously we know that, Amanda, yes, yeah, I know. But I actually didn't know this fact myself initially, and I was surprised by it somewhat, so I figured I'd share it with you. We all know that Jean is one of the preferred hosts, if not, I would say, the preferred host for the Phoenix Force. But did you know that the all-powerful cosmic entity was actually holding Jean back? That's right. Jean has stated before that she actually became aware after the Phoenix Force left her that it was causing her to hold back her abilities and her power for fear of the Phoenix taking hold over her, because then she wouldn't have control. So while many like to say that Jean has only ever been extremely powerful when she's merged with the Phoenix, it turns out it's probably just the opposite. So yeah, Jean destroying like a whole world, apparently that's Jean holding back. Which honestly, to me, I gotta say, that all kind of makes sense. Saying Jean isn't actually powerful and that it's all the Phoenix has always felt like a cop-out to me, considering it's her own power and her own empathy that the Phoenix was seemingly attracted to in the first place. So you would think that would mean that she's at least on the same power level as the Phoenix, if not more powerful, and that's why it was like, yeah, I want you as the host, cause you got the power.
In a 10 accelerated decoy, Miguel O'Hara possesses the proportional strength of a spider, granting him superhuman strength capable of lifting up to 10 tons at his peak, but this enhanced strength also extends to his legs, allowing him to leap great distances, reaching heights of at least 30 feet in a single bound, but also his speed. O'Hara's speed surpasses the natural limits of any human athlete, enabling him to move and run at extraordinary velocities. His agility, balance, and overall coordination are heightened beyond human capabilities, surpassing even the finest athletes, but his reflexes are so greatly enhanced, where he can actually run so fast that he leaves behind a body double that enemies will focus focus on because they think that it's him. Yeah, that's right, the dude basically can create a time remnant, like from the Flash, but not. And at 9, telepathy. This one you might not have known. Miguel O'Hara possesses the ability to communicate with others through telepathy, although the full extent of this power is still unknown, and its exact limits have yet to really be explored. O'Hara has demonstrated effortless communication with others using this gift. It is believed that this telepathy is closely connected to his spider sense, although he doesn't really have it. It's believed that it's kind of serving as kind of a compensation, serving as just a unique manifestation of heightened senses. I feel that this connection was best demonstrated in Spider-Man Edge of Time from 2011, in which Miguel is able to use a sample of Peter's DNA from a genetics program at Alchemax to create a chronal link, which is just a telepathic link between himself and Peter. To which Peter asks, are the other me's in my head too? But they weren't. Miguel tries to explain like the situation of that game to Peter, however Peter believes that there's a crazed killer on the loose in the building, so that he has to stop him before he kills everyone. But yeah, it's a great game, okay? Edge of Time, 10 out of 10, play it. And at 8, telescopic vision. Miguel also possesses exceptional visual acuity that surpasses that of average humans obviously, but even more so than you'd think. His eyesight allows him to see objects with incredible clarity at a much greater distance than normal, which obviously I'm wearing glasses I am in incredible envy of because I'm nearsighted. But even in low light conditions, O'Hara maintains the same level of visual perception, enabling him to navigate in near complete darkness. It is speculated that he may have the ability to perceive the infrared spectrum, allowing him to detect body heat and potentially see beyond what is visible to others, but that's yet to be proven from my knowledge at least. He also possesses a superior flicker fusion horizon, granting him the ability to perceive details that would appear as a blur to most individuals. This heightened vision acts as a form of early warning system, enabling him to anticipate and react to attacks from a distance. Additionally, his vision extends to the detection of energy waves, and initially he had to actually wear sunglasses to cope with this heightened sensitivity, but continued to wear them after adapting his enhanced visual capability. But yeah, he had to wear sunglasses, and it actually ends up becoming a weakness too, which is kind of weird, but hey, it's still a thing. There you go. And it's 7, venomous fangs. Miguel resides in a timeline devastated by a past civil war. Trapped within the corrupt corporation of Alchemax, Miguel's scientific brilliance is exploited by his employers, who ensnare him in a web of addiction to prevent his escape. Seeking to rewrite his genetic makeup to get rid of this addiction, Miguel embarked on an experiment to restore his former life by utilizing a copy of his pre-addiction DNA. However, his plans were thwarted as his DNA became intertwined with that of a spider, resulting in a transformative mutation. As a result, Miguel assumed the characteristics of a spider, with fangs this time reminiscent of the arachnid species, and talon-like claws mirroring their legs. Alongside these physical changes though, he acquired, all the normal stuff. Super strength, speed, agility, but yeah, he has fangs that can actually inject people with a paralytic poison, which is insane. It's so creepy that Gwen in Into the Spider-Verse, or Across the Spider-Verse, thought that he was a vampire. If people are thinking that you're freaking Edward Cullen, then it's creepy, okay? The dude was 107, hitting on a 17-year-old and marrying her within a year and 8 months, and 6 of those months passed because they had broken up. If you're being compared to Edward Cullen, that's creepy. Sorry, bro. And it's 6, organic spinrits webbing. In Miguel's forearms, he possesses spinrits that produce a potent and adhesive web-like substance from the back of his wrists. This organic webbing serves for multiple purposes, allowing him to swing around buildings and restrain individuals when needed, but his webs are chemically identical to authentic spider silk, setting them apart from the synthetic webbing used by the original Spider-Man, more in line with the Sam Raimi trilogy, which could be where Raimi drew his inspiration from. But at the very least, he won't have the issue that makes him run out of web, unless he has a web block, at least if he's waiting an hour between webbings. Oh wait, sorry, that's his forearm. My mistake. Moving on. Halfway through into number 5, marksmanship. This Spider-Man was able to hit a hostile holding a hostage multiple times with a pistol, with a bullet only grazing the hostage. I mean, let's be honest here, this isn't the ideal situation. We'd much rather the bullets not graze the hostage, but it's still better than totally failing, and in a way, it actually makes sense that he's skilled with firearms. He would have to have pretty good aim with all the web slinging he does, okay? He has to be precise with it when he's using it to fight villains. It would definitely take some skill to shoot a web and grab someone's hand specifically with it, and if you weren't good with your aim, you'd be a pretty dead Spider-Man, especially when swinging throughout the city, okay? Come on. If you miss the building, splat. And given his speed, if the man can move so fast that he leaves behind an after image of himself, he should have enough time to properly aim his webbing. Okay, and a gun. Yeah, while it's unexpected, it does make complete sense that he has good aim. He kinda has to, I guess. In a 4 original spider suit. This isn't necessarily a power, but hey, I'm gonna count it. O'Hara's costume incorporates advanced technology and materials to enhance its abilities. Constructed from unstable molecules akin to the Future Foundation costumes worn by the Fantastic Four, it possesses exceptional durability to withstand the sharpness of his claws without tearing. Additionally, the costume features a lightweight air foil positioned on its back, and this ingenious addition emits controlled anti-gravity particles, enabling O'Hara to gracefully glide and maneuver through the air by harnessing just the natural currents of updrafts. The combination of these innovative elements enhances O'Hara's mobility and agility, allowing him to navigate surroundings with even more ease and precision. So yeah, while it's his suit and not necessarily a power, it's enhancing his already just natural powers. So yeah, I'm gonna count it, and you're gonna deal with it. Again, this whole video is a canon event, you can't change it. And at 3, talons. In addition to all of the other extraordinary abilities, Miguel possesses retractable talons on his fingers and toes that allow him to crawl on surfaces like a spider. These razor-sharp talons, combined with his immense strength, can effortlessly rend even sturdy materials like cinder blocks into just ash, as demonstrated by severing Venom 2099's arm. Yeah, that was a thing he did. Miguel has also employed his talons to eliminate the Specialist, a powerful super soldier employed by Stark Fujikawa, and his talons effortlessly cut through molecularly dense body wraps designed to restrain him, and even enabled him to tear Electro 2099 in half after enduring an electroshock and evading another. Yeah, this dude's brutal. Notably, Miguel's talons are potent enough to actually punch out a shark, easily slicing through its flesh. So yeah, it's pretty damn scary. But ultimately, in number 2, accelerated vision. God, this dude's eyes are insane. I am jealous. O'Hara's visual acuity surpasses that of what you even thought before. That's right, because there's a 3rd goddamn number. His vision remains equally as sharp in low light conditions, granting him the ability to see in the dark. But like, yeah, it's not as heightened as spider sense. Okay, he doesn't have spider sense, but he still has insane vision in dark, and it still serves as an early warning, allowing him to anticipate and react to attacks from afar. Interestingly enough, he actually lacked the traditional spider sense possessed by Spider-Man until the game Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions, where Madame Web actually gave him the power for just the series of the game, but he didn't actually have them after the game. So it was just temporary for that game and that game alone, and he didn't have it after it, but hey, it's still pretty sick. And finally, in number 1, extreme durability. This dude is a freaking tank, okay? His suit proved impervious to the corrosive touch of Venom 2099. He withstood an energy blast from the powerful Inhuman Lash, which should have disintegrated him. He survived an explosion and endured a brutal beating from Maestro, which is a future version of the Hulk with heightened strength and Bruce's intellect. Miguel remained relatively unscathed after enduring plasma blasts meant to subdue the Hulk of 616. He tore a tank turret off while being electrocuted. He's had exceptional agility, he can skydive for miles and land unharmed. He survived a tanker explosion that caused a building to collapse. He took a blow from Thor 2099 that sent him into a building, only coming out slightly dizzy. Doctors were astonished by his healing factor, but I'm astonished that he's still alive. Okay, Miguel shrugged off a point-blank shotgun blast to the chest and successfully dug his way out of a collapsed building. What the hell? And then in his upgraded suit, he can endure a direct hit from the howitzer artillery cannon, withstanding a staggering force of 100 tons. Yeah. What the hell? I thought that his eyes were bad, or I thought his eyes were good, but like, I want that. I want to be able to skydive for miles and just superhero landing it. That'd be dope. Imagine these videos. I would come in from the ceiling like Anthony Padilla every single time, and it would actually happen. It wouldn't be effects. But hey, if you want to see more crazy things, be sure you click in the video that's popping up on screen now. Hopefully it's not something like hottest female superheroes who were pregnant while fighting crime, because I'm sure that's something we've done.
Coming in at number 10, talking to fish. Look, almost everyone knows Aquaman as the guy who can talk to fish. It's the most common thing brought up when talking about the hero. But that statement is both a huge misunderstanding and only one small part of a much more interesting ability. Aquaman is not like the Deep from The Boys. As far as we know, fish and marine life are not at the level of intelligence that allows them to hold conversations. They can't tell you how their day is going or try and maintain relationships with us, and honestly, why would they want to? We kinda suck. Aquaman is not actually talking to fish. Instead, Aquaman uses telepathy. He can hear the voice of the sea and communicate with its many denizens living within it, along with those who spring from it through empathic communication. While he is more than capable of using this ability to force marine beings to do what he wants, Aquaman prefers to telepathically suggest aquatic life towards his goal or out of harm's way in order to maintain their respect. This is something he has been able to do since he was a child, but it doesn't just pertain to aquatic life. Although he can't force humans or other creatures to do his bidding in the same way he can with the denizens of the sea, through his telepathy he is more than capable of weakening, probing, dominating, and attacking non-aquatic minds as well. And he's even used these abilities to boost up the power of his own teammates. Number 9. Accessing the clear. Prior to the New 52 reboot, Aquaman possessed the ability to tap directly into a force known as the clear. This primordial force is what binds all life in the sea and provides ocean-themed heroes with their superpowers. Thanks to his harnessing of the clear, Aquaman's awesome natural telepathy that we just talked about was augmented to a larger degree, allowing him to communicate with and summon sea creatures from the other side of the planet and send out telepathic broadcasts across the ocean. It even allowed him to form a universal consciousness with all life in the sea, enabling him to send his mind out to see through the eyes of sea life. Something interesting about this force is that, well, technically, all life at some point originated from the ocean. So, Aquaman can also push his telepathic powers to reach out to the higher land creatures to find that element of their brains that was once an aquatic dwelling creature and manipulate it. Now, post New 52, this connection to the clear has been altered slightly and is now known as a connection with the life force. The life force is one of the 7 forces of the universe, and for Aquaman, his connection to the life force is focused on marine life, and not just the marine life of Earth either. Through the life force, Arthur is connected to all living beings, which has enabled him to establish a supernatural link to any and all sentient entities throughout the entire cosmos. He can use this connection to determine a being's origin, as he was able to do when he determined that the Void Song came from an ocean planet after being in close contact with it. With the life force, a lot of his abilities are similar to the connection to the clear, with a whole bunch more still unknown even to Aquaman, which leaves some pretty exciting potential for his character and what powers he could possess in the future. Number 8. Night vision. Now, I don't know if you know, but the sea is deep, and a large majority of it is so far away from the surface that it's pretty much in a constant state of almost complete darkness. And even if it isn't, if it's nighttime or if we're looking through murky water, forget about it. You ain't seeing anything down there. It's estimated that the average human can see between 165 and 230 feet deep in moderately clear water. Well, for Aquaman, an Atlantean human hybrid, he once said that he could see clearly in depths as far down as 6,000 fathoms, aka 36,000 feet. That is insane. That includes seeing through the murkiest of waters. So, now, take that incredible supervision and put it on land where it's not inhibited by water, and Aquaman has incredible supervision, allowing him to see clearly in the dark and see things that other League members could never even hope to pick up on. Number 7. Summoning undead sea life. Some of our heroes' powers really only come to light or become useful in very specific situations, and some literally only appear in key events, never to be seen again. Now, an example of that kind of power for Aquaman came during the Brightest Day crossover event, which followed the awesome Blackest Night. In Blackest Night, Aquaman was one of a bunch of heroes and villains that were resurrected from the underworld to become members of the Black Lantern Corps. After their defeat, the remaining heroes and villains who returned to the land of the living had to now find find their purpose. Aquaman was returned with the purpose of both saving Aqualad and preventing a war between Atlantis and Zabel. Arthur found that since he was resurrected to serve as a member of the Black Lantern Corps, he was now able to summon undead sea life to come to his aid. And trust me when I say that it is much cooler than you might think. Unfortunately though, it didn't really stick around for a long time. Number 6. Magic. Now before you get all up in arms, no, Aquaman is not any kind of otherworldly powerful magic wielder. He's no Zatanna, Constantine, or Dr. Fate, but still, a lesser known inclusion to his surprisingly long list of abilities is that Aquaman has the underlying potential to cast and manipulate the forces of magic. Now it's worth noting that normally he needs an item of power to channel this power through, like, oh I don't know, a trident for example. But on a few occasions he's been able to use magic without his trident or any kind of channeling object for that matter. This magical ability is bestowed on him simply by being a member of Atlantean royalty, but also by being blessed by both Poseidon and the Lady of the Lake, the overseer of the metaphysical realm known as the Secret Sea. He has shown the magical capability to shoot lightning from his trident, manipulate the weather, create jets of water out of his hands, and he has even been able to dehydrate some enemies to the point of sending them to the afterlife, which is an absolutely terrifying way to go. But thanks to his magical affinity, Arthur Curry is also resistant and resilient to the forces of magic too, which is something he actually has over Superman. So take that, you haters. Number 5. Healing. In the comics, there was a time when Aquaman lost his left hand, and funnily enough, this actually managed to make him even cooler and or stronger in a few different ways. To make up for his lost appendage, he got himself a wide variety of alternate hands, each with different benefits. He has had a cybernetic hand with a retractable hook, as well as a hand made out of liquid metal. But I think his most notable hand was a special one made out of water, courtesy of the Lady of the Lake, called the Water Bearer's Hand. This hand was what allowed Aquaman to create freezing or scalding jets of water from his hands and dehydrate fools, but it has even more nifty benefits beyond that. Thanks to his magical water hand, Aquaman has received the ability to completely heal others with its magical properties. But then, there's also that nifty life force connection. This has allowed Aquaman to even restore fallen gods into their divine forms and retrieve the essences of dead gods, meaning Aquaman has not only resurrection abilities, but also resurrection that extends to godly entities themselves. Number 4. Portals. Let's jump back to that magic hand here for a second. The Water Bearer hand bestowed on Aquaman numerous magical abilities. Now we've talked about a bunch, but the hand seems to be the gift that keeps on giving. Another attribute it granted to Aquaman was the ability to open interdimensional portals. Obviously, as we've proven so far, Aquaman is no slouch, but he isn't really that helpful when it comes to extraterrestrial threats that require him to venture out of this world. For that, he would traditionally need the help of his other League members, but with the Water Bearer hand's magic, that was no longer the case. Now he could travel great distances across the world in an instant and even out into the wider universe or even other dimensions. Needless to say, the Lady of the Lake really lent Aquaman a hand with this gift. Pun intended. Number 3. Flight. This power has actually been a hotly contested point among fans of Aquaman for a long time. A lot of people believe that Aquaman cannot fly, and they are actually partially right. Honestly, there isn't really a need for him to fly. Being an aquatic character, it seems almost pointless, and there is also the question of how he would even be able to break gravity like that. Although you could ask that of any flying character, honestly. I think the confusion really comes from the fact that Aquaman does often perform super jumping to get around. I'm talking he jumps miles in single bounds, similar to the Hulk. That is easy to mistake for actual flying, and for a long time that was the extent of his airborne abilities. But luckily for Aquaman, he has a pretty good relationship with the god of the sea, Poseidon, and thanks to that Olympian's blessing, Aquaman gained the actual ability to fly in the Prime Earth post-Flashpoint DC universe. Unsurprisingly though, he still doesn't really use it that much. Number 2. Water Wraith. JLA The Obsidian Age was a story from 2003, which, among other things, involved Aquaman and Atlantis being sent 3,000 years back in time, where they were ultimately put under the thumb of the League of Ancients. As we would almost all expect, the Justice League discovered the disappearance and they go to the rescue, traveling back in time to save their comrade and his people. When they arrive, they learn that the sorceress Gamamemini, whose name I likely savagely butchered just now, had trapped Aquaman's consciousness in a pool of water. Now, after freeing the rest of the Atlanteans, the Justice League launched their final assault on this sorceress to no avail as she reappeared in the future. Now, in the future, or I guess the present, she attempted to take control of the world by causing a global drought. Now, in order to stop her, Zatanna channeled Aquaman's consciousness into the oceans. This means Aquaman, with this upgrade, literally became a living body of water, and he used this awesome water wraith power to defeat Gamamemini once and for all. But this isn't the only time he's taken on a form composed entirely of H2O. And finally, in at number 1, super strength. Super strength is one of those things that most superheroes are just kind of expected to have. But not all super strength is equal, and characters have varying degrees of it. I think a lot of people who are familiar with the character of Aquaman but aren't his close fans may underestimate his strength. Again, we know Aquaman is often the butt of a lot of jokes related to his usefulness, but this guy is no slouch, not by a long shot. Aquaman is strong. He is more than strong enough to send Superman and Wonder Woman several dozen feet away with singular blows, which is nothing to scoff at. He has been capable of lifting a 160,000 ton sea liner barehanded and lifting and throwing a sunken cargo ship. But even more impressive than that is when he literally pushed an entire tectonic plate over the entrance to the trench's lair while underwater. Aquaman's strength is something that is often overlooked, kind of like how the character himself is overlooked much too often.
In at 10, acidic hands. Discovered by Kane Parker after the Clones event, a deformity in his hands causes Kane to possess the ability to generate an endothermic energy that upon skin-to-skin contact inflicts severe burn marks on individuals. Yeah, this man can use his hands that stick to walls to also burn people. Usually he would leave his distinctive marks across a person's face, calling it the mark of Cain, although it is believed that he can do so on other parts of the body, which I mean it makes sense given that, you know, you can just grab on with a hand and then boom, you're burned. But interestingly enough, he also utilizes this way in like a non-harmful manner, using it to burn away his like beard hair, which just gives him a better trim, which is just kind of funny. I like the fact that he uses it to burn his hand into people's faces, but then also just gives himself a nice little trim. But while this ability was discovered by Kane, Peter soon after learns that he can do the same thing. And while he hasn't used this ability, he is still able to do it and just chooses not to because it's a horrible thing to do. He can also pull people's skin off using the stickiness of his hands, which I have asked before, like I've proposed that idea before because I think that he should have threatened to do that to Kingpin instead of filling his lungs with web, but oh well. In at 9, camouflage. Now this is one of the primary abilities used by Miles Morales' Spider-Man, however, you can actually see that in Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man he has this ability as well. Not to the same extent, of course, he can't turn invisible, but there's a theory about how this presents itself. Firstly, the fact that Spider-Man talks to MJ, Aunt May, and Harry without them recognizing Peter's voice could be explained by this just being thanks to this camouflage ability. MJ only recognizes that Peter is Spider-Man after he wants to tell her, you know, after she kisses her fiance upside down. Like, he wants her to know, so of course the camouflage would be off then. And Harry only learns his identity after literally taking his mask off. So yeah, this would also explain why the guy on the train in Spider-Man 2 describes the almost 30-year-old Maguire as just a kid barely older than my son. Or in the comics and animated series, we see that Peter eventually mutates into a giant spider. Maybe staying human is this camouflage ability. His power keeps him looking human. To further support this, in the animated series, Peter starts losing his powers shortly before mutating into the spider creature. If one of his powers was keeping him human, then it would make total sense that he mutates after losing them. And Peter actually started losing his powers in Spider-Man 2, so maybe that's a storyline we could have seen later on. In at 8, stingers. The other represents a potent spider deity that's intricately connected to the web of life and destiny. While While the true nature of its purpose remains enigmatic, the entity grants its chosen vessels heightened abilities and the potential for transformation into a spider-like humanoid monster in times of peril or intense anger. The Earth 616 Spider-Man was selected by the Great Weaver to serve as the receptacle for the power of the other when he assumed the mantle of Spider-Man. However, due to his subconscious resistance, Spider-Man suppressed and denied this spider aspect until a confrontation with the inheritor Morlun, who consumed the essence of totem avatars, prompting a resurgence of his connection to the other. At one point during the storyline, Peter Parker has created retractable stingers that are concealed beneath his wrists. So yeah, with these stingers possessed like a razor sharp edge that could be extended when needed, and then they also delivered like a venom that induced temporary paralysis into his target, which is kind of dope. Kane Parker actually is currently the individual who uses this ability because of course it's Kane, but yeah, it's still pretty dope. And it's 7 clairvoyance. When you think about it, Spider Sense is kind of predicting the future. It doesn't give you visions or show you exactly what will happen like is typically associated with clairvoyance, but instead it's presented just like a really good gut instinct. Like that tingling sensation that accompanies the Spider Sense can vary in intensity, providing an indication of the threat level, but like a casual encounter with a potential adversary who isn't actively engaging with an individual may trigger a mild alert, which means that you should be cautious. But on the other hand, when you're facing like an imminent and life-threatening danger like a sniper, like the sensation is going to intensify significantly, even possibly becoming painful. And instinctively it compels you into action. And while the Spider Sense doesn't reveal the specific nature of the threat, it offers you guidance on the direction that you should move in order to evade it and things like that. Okay, this extraordinary ability warns you of various perils, okay, ranging from projectiles to like lasers and even contaminated food. So yeah, I'm gonna call that a form of clairvoyance. I can't do that. When I do it, it's called autism. And it's 6, equilibrium. While yes, having sticky limbs and appendages makes it easy and possible to stick to walls, that's not all that you need to actually be Spider-Man. Like sure you can stand on a wall, but even with all the strength of your abs, you wouldn't be able to keep you like balanced and standing upright, alright? No one can do that, not even Chuck Norris. Like how else could you not lose your momentum or anything while swinging through New York, okay? He's swinging around buildings, through alleys, even through like the spaces between cabs and their backs, okay? There's no way that this guy could do all of that just inherently, okay? Like yeah, he's got the powers of a spider, but spiders don't swing around the city doing flips. His center of gravity is constantly fixing himself to keep himself balanced while chasing after red psychopathic space aliens and dudes in rhino costumes. So yeah, I'm gonna call that a power. And at 5, super speed. Spider-Man's agility and acrobatics are often associated with his spider sense and spider qualities, but there's another superpower that often goes unnoticed: incredible speed. Okay, while swinging between buildings, Spider-Man can cover 2 miles in a mere 5 seconds. And it's not just like his web swinging that propels him. His speed allows him to also avoid attacks and dodge bullets. Okay, if you can dodge bullets, you're freaking fast. Spider-Man's exceptional speed was showcased extremely well during the Civil War storyline when he attacked Luke Cage's mansion prior to switching sides. He bursted into the mansion, faced off a room filled with SWAT team officers, Scarlet Witch, and Hawkeye, but he moved so swiftly that he appeared as a blur, taking down multiple opponents without being detected. Okay, this often overlooked power grants Spider-Man an incredible advantage in combat, and explains quite a lot. I mean, he won't be beating Quicksilver or Flash in any races, but dude's still fast as hell. Okay, if you look like a blur, then yeah, you're fast. And at 4, talking to spiders. God, thank God they don't talk about this one anymore, because spiders. The power to control and summon spiders may initially appear better suited for like a horror comic, but it actually happens to be one of Spider-Man's lesser known abilities. He chooses not to emphasize the terrifying aspect of this power, thank the Lord. Instead, he uses it in more of like a collective strength sense, tapping into the power of many rather than just aiming to haunt his opponents with lifelong nightmares. Thank you, Peter. This skill likely was introduced into the comics because people were like watching Ant-Man a little too much, you know, because he can like control ants, and now even Squirrel Girl can command squirrels. So it just seems like if you have a connection to an animal, you should be able to control them, apparently. So yeah, Spider-Man had that sort of connection established with arachnids. In truth, it feels more aligned with like Venom or Carnage, but I mean, the only reason that Venom has spider powers is because he bonded to Peter in the first place, so I understand why that wouldn't happen. But like, yeah, okay, they're twisted villains who would fully exploit this ability, but thank God Venom doesn't have it. Yeah, interestingly enough though, it's not the mainstream Spider-Man who possesses this ability, but rather Kane Parker, but I'm sure Spider-Man could do it too. If he can do the acid hands and he had the claws, I'm sure he could do this, but thank God he doesn't. Getting close to the end in number 3, regeneration. While webbing is handy for transportation and apprehending criminals and sometimes even just making a mess if you want to, Peter's mind actually lets him use this ability in unconventional and actually kinda genius ways, specifically turning it back on himself. This gave rise to the concept of a web cocoon, an audacious idea that bears resemblance to how Peter immobilizes criminals with webbing until the authorities arrive, because you know he wraps them up. But the only difference is that when Peter does the web cocoon on himself, he uses it as a tool for hibernation and accelerated healing. Peter has only used this extremely insane skill on one occasion, but it was because he sustained near fatal injuries during a battle. So he encased himself in a cocoon of webbing to induce rapid healing. It's so insanely cool and a tremendously valuable ability for Spider-Man, but it appears to be exclusive to Peter himself and doesn't really extend to others, and again, he hasn't used it again since. The primary reason behind the limitation was, well, I mean, he's in hibernation when this is happening. You can't really produce Spider-Man comics when Peter's not Spider-Man. But also, while he's in there, he sheds the damaged skin and basically regenerates a whole new body, which is gonna make us all wonder the same thing that WandaVision did. Ship of Theseus? Is it the same Peter, or is it a new Peter if he regenerated basically everything? There you go, debate it in the comments. You're welcome. Engagement. But ultimately, in number 2, radiation resistance. Now, while some spider-related abilities are well known within Spider-Man's world, you know, wall crawling, proportional strength, knowing the formula to make webs, spider sense, one of them is actually lesser known, but in reality makes a lot of sense. Spider-Man has demonstrated a resistance to poisons and harmful chemicals on multiple occasions, and while not a pivotal power, it does serve a purpose. Essentially, if a villain attempts to poison Peter Parker, their efforts would just be in vain. Moreover, if Mary Jane were to betray Peter and attempt to slip something into his coffee, he would remain oblivious. His resistance to basic poisons could potentially be exploited if someone like knew this and like tried to use it against him, so it's often overlooked, but yeah, it adds another layer of protection for Peter that reflects just like the fact that he is in essence just a Spider-Man. And given that his powers were given to him by a radioactive spider, the resistance extends to radiation as well. So yeah, that's right. If Green Goblin ever goes to Chernobyl, Spidey can still stop him. And finally, in at number 1, Spider-Mobile. Hell yes. I love how ridiculous this is. Corona Motors, aiming to promote their environmentally friendly car engine, enlisted the services of advertising firm Carter and Lombardo to propose the idea of a Spider-Mobile in Spider-Man comics. Initially dismissing it as foolish, Spider-Man reconsidered when he realized the dire need for money to cover his rent and expenses. So with the assistance of the Human Torch, they successfully constructed the Spider-Mobile in the comics. After a crash course in driving, Spider-Man's first encounter with the vehicle led him to capture one of Hammerhead's henchmen. However, Mysterio ends up getting Spider-Man to dump the car in a river, prompting Corona Motors to demand its return, despite the inability to locate it in the water. Spider-Man faced a modified version of the Spider-Mobile, engineered by the Tinkerer later on, engaging in a fierce battle with it. Spider-Man eventually subdued it and returned the damaged imitation Spider-Mobile to Carter and Lombardo, but yeah, that's a thing that happened in the comics. Yeah, there you go.